Hi, welcome, and thank you for joining us for Pharmacist Support's Trainee Bite-Size series. This is our information series designed to help you understand and navigate through your training year. Each presentation contains key information in manageable chunks, which are based on the kind of inquiries we get here at Pharmacist Support. This video on foundation training employment contracts is for students due to begin their pharmacist training next year, or for anyone who is looking for or is due to start a foundation training placement. Now, most trainees have a really positive experience. However, some will experience challenges or problems before or during their training. If you do, what's the secret to overcoming them? Take action or seek help as soon as you can. You can remember this as TASH. Now, this may sound obvious, but it's so important. If you are having any difficulties, the longer you leave things, the more problems it can cause you. Now, with foundation training, there are many issues to consider, so we will remind you during each bite-sized video about the importance of taking action and seeking help. We'd rather you be bored of us saying this than feel you ever have to just put up with difficulties in your training. Whether it's speaking with your designated supervisor, HR department, training lead, or contacting your trade union or pharmacist support, don't ignore issues and think they'll go away. The earlier you tackle them, the more likely they'll be fixed and won't cause you those bigger problems. During this presentation, we will give you more details of how and where you can seek help with employment contracts. As a student or trainee, you may have different experiences of the working world. Some of you may be very knowledgeable about your employment rights and have experience of employment contracts. For some of you, the pharmacist training placement could be your first full-time job, and you may have little experience of employment rights or contracts. This video aims to provide some basic helpful information on employment contracts and what to look out for. For tailored advice on your contract, it's important to seek specialist advice, for example, through a trade union or pharmacist support employment advisor. Again, I will go into a bit more detail about getting advice later in the video. Now, a bad employment contract can have a significant impact on your well-being during training. So asking for a written contract and checking this while being aware of what to look out for is an important part of looking after yourself as a trainee. Now, this is a spoiler alert for the end of the video, but it's the tips so good we use them twice. It should be to ask for a written employment contract, to carefully check all the terms and conditions and that you're happy with them before accepting an offer, signing a contract, and definitely well in advance of starting work. And if you have any concerns about your contract or need advice because you would like to get out of a contract you have agreed to, seek employment advice as soon as you can. So let's get to it, as we have lots to cover in this video. We hope you find the information helpful. The topics we'll cover include: what is an employment contract? When should you get a written contract? What should be included in a contract? Basic employment rights, pay, international students, visa considerations, notice requirements, study time, discrimination, terms and conditions to be wary of, and of course, where to seek information and advice. So, what is an employment contract? Well, it's an agreement between an employer and employee setting out the terms and conditions of employment. This includes things such as working hours, pay, holiday allowance, and notice requirements. When should you ask to see your contract? Well, we have already touched on this, but it can be really important to ask for a copy of your contract before accepting an offer, signing anything, or starting work. Again, you should check the contract carefully before signing so you know what you're agreeing to. Not sure about your contract? Do seek advice. So, quiz time now. Don't worry, it's only one question. True or false? If you have not received and signed a written employment contract, then you do not have an employment contract. It's false. There is no such thing as an employee with no employment contract. As soon as someone accepts a job offer, they have a contract with their employer. An employment contract doesn't have to be written down. A job offer is accepted when you tell the employer you agree to start working there. If you found your placement through Oriel, this will be when you personally tell the employer you agree to start, rather than when you accept a placement on the Oriel system. And what must you get as part of an employment contract? Well, employment contracts, as we know, don't have to be written down. Trainees who haven't got a copy of their contract, however, should receive a written statement within 2 months of starting work. This is known as a written statement of employment particulars. The statement must contain certain terms and conditions, such as working hours, pay, holiday requirements, and notice requirements. For a full list of the terms and conditions the statement must contain, just Google written statement of employment to see the gov.uk pages on this. Now, regardless of whether you have a written contract, workers are entitled to certain employment rights, including getting the national minimum or living wage, depending on your age. The living wage is higher than the minimum wage and is paid to workers over the age of 23. Protection against unlawful deductions from wages, the statutory minimum level of paid holiday, which is currently 28 days, including bank holidays for full-time work, the statutory minimum length of rest breaks, and the right to statutory sick pay. Your rights also include to not work more than 48 hours on average per week, or to opt out of this right if you choose, protection against unlawful discrimination, protection for whistleblowing, which is reporting wrongdoing in the workplace, and to not be treated less favourably if you work part-time. So, how about your training salary? Well, trainees in England, Wales and Scotland with an NHS recognised placement are currently guaranteed an NHS training grant of a maximum of 52 weeks. Trainees who require longer than 52 weeks of training might be able to get additional funding from the NHS, but this is not guaranteed. The amount and how you are paid can vary on the sector you work in and the country you are in. The GPHC have no part in funding and cannot give any advice to trainees on this matter. Now, community pharmacy trainees in England don't necessarily get the entire NHS Foundation training grant. This grant is paid to the employer and it's up to them how much of it is passed on to the trainee. Pay for community placements in England can vary greatly. The only requirement, unless you're an international trainee on a visa with an appropriate salary, is that you're paid the minimum wage or over. Now, trainees can check to see if they're receiving the minimum or living wage using the government minimum wage calculator. Just search National Minimum Wage Calculator in Google. Other search engines are available, of course. Trainees who find that they're not being offered the minimum wage may wish to seek advice. You'll also need to consider if your salary will cover your living costs. You shouldn't forget to factor in costs such as travel to and from work, registering for the assessment, supporting yourself financially between finishing placements and starting work, and GPHC registration fees on completion of training. Now, currently, hospital trainees in England, which are all allocated through the Oriel system, are paid according to the Band 5 starting salary on the nationally agreed NHS salary scale. Salaries are higher in parts of London and the southeast of England owing to the higher cost of living. You can search online for NHS Agenda for Change pay scales to get the current Band 5 starting salary. Now, trainees in Scotland can apply for the Scottish Foundation Training Year, FTY, run by NHS Education for Scotland, NES. Applicants who don't get an FTY placement will not receive a funded placement in Scotland. Trainees who have an FTY placement are paid a Scottish NHS Band 5 starting salary, regardless of the sector that they work in. For the current Scottish trainee salary, you can either search for Scottish NHS Agenda for Change salaries online, refer to your trainee literature provided by NES, or contact NES. NES funded placements are capped. However, Scottish employers can employ as many trainees as they wish, as long as they fit the GPHC criteria. How these trainees are paid would be for the employer to decide, but they would not receive direct funding from NES. In Wales, Health Education and Improvement Wales, HEIW, employ Welsh trainees, and trainees will be paid a Welsh NHS Band 5 starting salary, again, regardless of sector. For up-to-date details on salaries in Wales, you can search Wales NHS Agenda for Change salaries online, or refer to your HEIW documentation, or contact HEIW. Currently, for international students, there is the additional consideration of ensuring your job offer and contract meets the terms of your visa. If you work in a job that doesn't meet the terms of your visa, you will be working illegally and you may be asked to leave the country. You can see the current visa options for international trainees in our International Students Non-EEA Visa Requirements or the Foundation Pharmacy Year webpage. The government introduced a new graduate immigration route in summer 2021 that's been available to international students who have completed a degree in the UK. Trainees as a master's graduate will be able to work or look for work in the UK at any skill level for up to 2 years on this visa. For many international students, this has made applying for a visa, securing a job and changing placements if they need to, much simpler. However, each visa has its own terms that may suit you depending on your situation and plans. It can be important to do your research before deciding what is right for you. Now, do know immigration rules can be subject to change, so it can be important to keep up to date with information from the government and UK Visas and Immigration, UKVI. If you are unsure if your job will meet the terms of your visa, you may wish to seek immigration advice. You may wish to see if your university can provide this advice, but if you're unsure how to access advice, you can contact us and we can discuss where you may be able to get this. So, how about working hours? Well, the GPHC requirement is for between 35 and 45 hours per week for trainees. If you are offered hours at the upper end of this scale, you should give careful thought to your work-life balance. What about rest breaks at work? Now, the employment status of a trainee can usually be described as an employee. Regarding employment status, employees come under the broader group of workers, but employees have some additional rights. This includes things such as sick pay and protection against unfair dismissal. You can search the term employment status online to see the gov.uk information on the rights of employees. Now, workers, which as mentioned includes all employees, have the right to one uninterrupted 20-minute rest break during their working day if they work more than 6 hours a day. For example, this could be a tea or lunch break. The break doesn't have to be paid. It depends on the worker's employment contract. In terms of daily rest, workers have the right to 11 hours rest between working days. For example, if they finish work at 8 p.m, they shouldn't start work again until 7 a.m. the next day. For weekly rest, workers have the right to either an uninterrupted 24 hours without any work each week, or an uninterrupted 48 hours without any work each fortnight. Now, a worker's employment contract may say they're entitled to more or different rights to breaks from work. Do seek advice if you have any concerns over rest breaks in your contract. So, what will your holidays be? Full-time workers are entitled to 28 days paid holiday per year, including bank holidays. For part-time workers, this will be prorated in relation to your hours. Now, some employers may give more holiday, but they can't by law give any less. Trainees need to allow for bank holidays when booking time off work. If you are required to work a bank holiday, you won't lose out on any holiday. You're still entitled to 28 days holiday, so you should get an alternative days holiday instead. Some trainees like to book a long holiday in the run-up to sitting the assessment. If you do want to do this, make sure you get your request in early. If being able to have a particular holiday is essential, you may wish to discuss this with your employer at the outset. Requests for more than 2 weeks of leave might not be granted. Employers can't refuse to let you take holiday. However, they can take into account business needs and they can turn down requests for holidays at very busy periods or holiday requests that are unusually long. If you're off work unwell, will you receive sick pay? Well, if you are off work owing to illness, you will be entitled to statutory sick pay, SSP, but this is not paid for the first 4 days of absence. So if you are off for 4 days or less, you won't get paid unless your employer offers additional sick pay as an enhanced benefit in your contract. Now, a really important term to look at in your contract is your notice period. The notice period can differ between what the employer needs to give an employee when terminating a contract and what the employee has to give when leaving a job. We would say anything up to a month is acceptable. Anything more, and you should consider your options or seek advice. Check your notice period before accepting an offer and signing any contract. As we've discussed, thankfully, the majority of trainees have a really positive experience during the training year, but some trainees do face difficulties. If you're unhappy with your placement and would like to leave, the length of notice you're required to work can become very important. For example, if the requirement is for 3 months, you'd be faced with having to do a further 3 months of work in a placement you are not happy with. If you do wish to hand in your notice and are unsure what this means for you in relation to your contract, again, it can be really important to seek employment advice. Now, we do receive lots of inquiries at Pharmacist Support about study time. Employers don't currently have to offer trainees study time. The GPHC do recommend that all trainees receive some study time each week. However, it's up to your employer how much or how little you get. If you want to ensure that you get your study time each week, you'll need to get this written into the employment contract. If you only agree this verbally and the employer changes their mind, there's very little you can do about it. If it's written into your contract, you can then get legal advice on how to make sure the employer sticks to the agreed times. Now, it's really important to be aware of your rights in relation to discrimination. No one should have to experience discrimination while at work. It is against the law to discriminate against anyone because of age, gender reassignment, being married or in a civil partnership, being pregnant or on maternity leave, disability, race including nationality, ethnic or national origin, religion or belief, sex or sexual orientation. If you feel your employment contract discriminates against you or you feel you're discriminated against during your training, it can be important to seek employment advice. And not too long now for a reminder of how you can seek that advice. So, are there things to be particularly wary of in an employment contract? It can be important for trainees to check for terms in their contract that could be detrimental to them. While these things may be uncommon, there are contract terms you should be aware of and consider what they mean for you. Unfavorable terms to look out for include flexible working hours. Now, ideally, trainees should know how many hours a week they're working. For example, contracts could state usual hours to be 37/40 hours with an added clause stating the employee may be required to work extra hours as needed for the business. Trainees who sign this type of contract could find themselves working up to, say, 48 hours per week for the same pay. Also look for no defined statement of hours, as this can lead to trainees having to work evenings or weekends. Also, variations in working sites. Unless you've agreed to some cross-sector training, trainees should try to make sure they have a specified branch they'll be working in. Not checking this could leave you open to problems such as travel to places that are much further than you wish to go. Equally, this could lead to you not having the required contact time with your designated supervisor, which is set at 28 hours over 4 days a week for full-time trainees. The GPHC can, in some cases, agree up to 3 named supervisors to share contact time. So do contact the GPHC if you need to discuss this. Also look out for long notice period requirements, as we've mentioned. Again, unfortunately, a minority of placements will not work out. And if you need to leave, ideally, you wouldn't want to have to work a long notice period, for example, 3 months. Now, we would say that anything beyond 1 month for a 1-year employment contract is excessive, and the ideal would be 1 or 2 weeks. Also look for any attempt to reduce statutory rights, for example, holiday or minimum pay, things like that. And finally, financial penalty clauses for leaving before the end of the 12-month contract or for not starting the training placement at all. These clauses can be written into a contract and require trainees to pay a sum of money. Normally, this is for administrative purposes or to cover payments made to external training providers. If you sign a contract with a financial penalty clause in it, it means that you are agreeing to it and you will be liable to pay the amount if you leave before the end of your contracted period of work. Other unfavorable terms can include things such as not being able to work at another placement in the surrounding area for a certain amount of time. If any of the above feature in a contract of employment, it can be important for trainees to seek advice before signing. So as we're nearly wrapping up, as promised, here's the reprise of our top 3 tips. I'll repeat that if you only take 3 things from this presentation, it should be: ask for a written contract, carefully check all the terms and conditions and that you're happy with them before accepting an offer, signing a contract, and definitely well in advance of starting work. And finally, if you have any concerns, seek advice. And also, as promised, here's some places you can seek information and advice. Now, we have some very useful information on trainee employment contracts, which you can access on our website. It's under the I Need Help Managing My Trainee Experience section, alongside loads of other useful information for trainees. Now, this covers much of the learning from this video and more, so do check it out as a handy resource to refer back to. If you have any queries about your contract of employment, then it can be important to seek specialist employment advice. This could be through a trade union. A trade union is an organisation made up of members, and the main aim of a trade union is to protect and advance the interests of its members in the workplace. Students and trainees might want to consider joining a trade union, as membership can give access not just to employment advice, but also help to defend a trainee's professional reputation and provide professional indemnity insurance. The Pharmacist Defence Association is a union that's free to join for students and trainees and offers expert advice from experienced pharmacists and lawyers. If you're not a member of a trade union, Pharmacist Support may be able to help by referring you to a specialist citizens advice advisor. If you would like to be referred, please contact us, and you can find our contact details on our website, pharmacistsupport.org, or at the end of the presentation. But as always, remember, if you're having any difficulties before or after your training, remember your TASH. Take action or seek help as soon as you can. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you found our video useful. We wish you all a happy and successful training experience. If you're a social media fan, you can also connect with us via Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And if you're keen to keep up to date on our activities, you can sign up via our website to receive our bi-monthly e-news. Now, we do rely heavily on donations to help us provide our much needed services. If you are able to donate to Pharmacist Support, you can do so easily by texting Pharma20 to either of the numbers on the screen, and we're always extremely grateful for any support we receive. But thank you so much again, and do look out for more useful trainee bite-sized videos in our series. Take care and bye for now.